Now I'm very excited to bring back one of the most respected and experienced handicappers in the country in Mr. Tony George from DocSports.com. You can follow Tony on Twitter at TGeorgeSports. My man Tony, here we are. The madness. You got the big tournaments. Finally, the big boys. How are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good. I mean, I'm apprehensive this year with all, just so much parity in college basketball, this year, heading into madness. We got through the weekend okay. Not a lot of big surprises. Drake won the Mo Valley. I was involved in that tournament, won every game we put out in it. I follow that closely. One of the mid-majors I follow. But, I was looking, I know you'd sent me a little homework to do. And you were talking about the top 6 teams, maybe you thought they're all interchangeable. But I was looking at KenPom, and the next 20 after the top 6, there's 5 points or less in a power rating between them. The next 20 teams, and then after that, the next 18, there's 5 points or less between all them and power ratings. Are just so it's just, you want to say it's top heavy, but it's not even top heavy, because top heavy is what? Duke, Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, Houston, Texas Tech, Michigan State, Iowa State, St. John's. Anybody on any given night, any of those teams could beat anybody. And then the next 20 teams on any given night, anybody could beat anybody. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see this week who wants to save gas in the tank in these big tournaments. I mean, does it really matter to Houston for a number 1 seed, or Duke number 1 seed, or let's say Auburn if they lose their conference tournament?
Because I think they have it already. I think Houston's going to be number 1 even if they lose. If they lose, probably in the first game. They're not going to get three.
Same thing with the number 2 seeds too. I mean, they're locked in. They kind of know. So to me, it just seems like a veritable potpourri. You better watch the frick out.
Agreed, my man. It's tough because there's a really good top tier, and then there's a second tier that's good, but they have weaknesses, and they can really screw it up. Yet we've seen these tier 2 guys beat the tier 1s every once in a while. It's just mixed up. I think the motivation is going to be a little bit different when we get to conference tournament time, just because I think teams are kind of realizing that they don't want to complete their gas tank. I think coaches know that too. Auburn won the SEC last year. Do they really need to do that again and then get bounced in the tournament? I don't know. I think maybe the coach will just be looser with the team, a little bit less, maybe stringent, just kind of lax a little bit, and let the kids decide on the court. That's what I would do. I mean, if you won the regular season, you don't need, and you won it last year and failed in the big dance like Auburn did, there's no reason to push it, in my opinion. I think keep your eye on the prize, my friend. But, asking that, who are your 6 teams in college basketball that you think, well, not necessarily have the best chance at the Final Four, but, how you rank the teams?
Well, I've interchanged Duke and Auburn at 1. I think I'd probably lean Auburn, Duke. I'm really big on Florida. I think Florida, also in the SEC, if I had a gun to my head, if they played Tennessee 10 times, they'd probably beat them 6. I like Florida a lot. The Auburn, Duke, Tennessee, Florida. I like Houston out of the Big 12, but I also like Texas Tech out of the Big 12.
Me too.
A lot. That's a sleeper in that tournament for sure. Not really a sleeper, but there you can interchange them and Iowa State at any given point in time. But yeah, I'm big on those teams. Big East. The Big East and the Big Ten are interesting. St. John's, UConn, Creighton is the sleeper in that tournament. We can talk about these tournaments in a minute and not really long shots, but some good odds on those teams. But St. John's reminds me of the two top teams in the Big East and the Big Ten mirror each other. I read this somewhere today, somebody comparing them. And Michigan State and St. John's mirror each other. They're both really good teams. They're both extremely well coached. They both have a lot of talent. Neither one of them can hit the three ball. You know, they're not good 3-point shooting teams, but they mirror each other. And I think if you're not a good 3-point shooting team in the tournament, you don't go past the Sweet 16 very often. That's just 33 years. This is a guard-driven tournament. It always has been. There's been teams that have won it with a team concept, like a Virginia that had a team concept, no real superstar scorer, played hard-nosed defense, were very well coached. You know, that comes into play. But, you know, I think I would be, put it this way, I would be surprised if someone from the SEC didn't win it all this year.
Yeah, I mean, SEC or Duke, right? I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Duke wins at all, because I have Duke now at my number one team. I have Florida, my number two team. You know, they went into Auburn and
there you go.
Pimp slapped them, as our good friend Brian Edwards likes to say. Auburn is 3, Alabama's 4. I have Texas Tech number 5. I actually have Texas Tech number 5 above Houston. They did win in Houston, and they've been not healthy down the stretch, and they're healthy again. So you can't really take too much out of that. Some of those TCU loss and a few ugly ones, but and then the Big Ten, you know, maybe 7 or 8 probably is Michigan State, but dude, I wouldn't mind dropping them a little bit farther and I know I'm sounding just like everybody else, but I see it too. You know, you don't always disagree with the public media, you know, if they're right. The Big Ten sucks this year. I'm sorry. It's not good. You know, and I, you know, I love to be contrarian, but you know, the NCAA tournament though is you know, it's the hot teams, not necessarily the good teams. So maybe, even though I'm down on the Big Ten, maybe if you fill out your bracket, you know, Big Ten centric, it would you win it just because nobody else is going to do it. So that's for a different discussion in that strategy. But what I will say is that I can switch this out next week, man. I mean, I've had Bama at number 1 at one time. I had Auburn at number 1 at one time. You know, I think it's, you know, they're all deserving, and you know, it's going to be interesting to see a prop out there if we can get one. How many SEC teams over 1.5, under 1.5 get to the Final Four?
I haven't mentioned Alabama. They're in my top 10, but I see some inconsistencies with them that concern me. You know, I don't like it when teams rely heavily on one player when you get deep into a tournament. You need 3 or 4. You know, they rely a lot on Sears. They're a good team, don't get me wrong. They have good players around him, but they have a tendency to let him handle the ball 70, 80% of the time when they need to throw it around. And their offense and the way they run it at times, especially, you know, in tight games where they need to eat clock or spread it around or slow down the pace, take the edge off the other team, they don't do it. That concerns me a little bit. They had some losses here towards the end of the season that concern me. Your point on Duke, here's the thing that why I'm not as high on Duke as I am an SEC team. They haven't played anybody. The AC, speaking about the Big Ten sucks. The ACC outside of Duke and Clemson, they pretty much suck this year too.
Louisville's good.
Well, you could throw Louisville in there as
that's
as
it. But that's it. I agree. That's it. The rest is trash, inconsistent. North Carolina was down 14. I bet North Carolina's plus 16.5 live, and then they come and back and pull ahead by 4 points. And then at the end of the damn game, I'm biting my fingers when it's like, am I going to lose this 16.5? You know, that is just, you can't play consistent basketball like that. I do agree, but I will say at least that, you know, they lost to Kansas and Kentucky. They're at least close games. I feel Duke got a lot better since then, and Duke beat Auburn. So, you know, and it's, like I said, I think Florida and Duke are probably my number one choices, but I'm not going to be freaking alone here. It's going to be everybody in America minus the Auburn fans.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to be contrarian. That's why I'm going to be doing some other stuff like Survivors and some fun contests like that. But moving on, let's talk about a sleeper. I gave out High Point like last week as a sleeper. I got another one to think about. This team I just had 4.5 to 1 to win their tournament, and they just won from me yesterday. As a dog, they were also a 4.5 point dog. Omaha. They looked, I love those Summit League teams that, just go out there and chuck it. That's what they do. They go out there and chuck it. And Omaha, man, the kids there look kind of good. They look like big. They were just rebounding so hard over St. Thomas. And I kind of felt to myself that, maybe these kids can kind of compete a little bit with some of the better teams. I mean, they're kind of limited. They have a couple 6'8" and 6'8" and 9 guys, no 7-footers, but they have some good guard play. JJ White's doing really good there. Man, they had a ferocious dunk yesterday. I think that this team could make a little noise. What about you?
Yeah, actually, I went up and saw him play in Omaha.
All right.
Yeah, the old Mavericks, they recruited me in high school to come. Sandy Buddha was their head coach. I'm going back to early 80s, but I got recruited to play football there. I've been a Mavericks fan. Trev Alberts, who now is the Texas A&M athletic director, ex-Nebraska All-American, ex-Indianapolis Colt, and ex-Nebraska athletic director, was an athletic director at UNO up there in Omaha, and kind of he turned them around. He turned that entire athletic program around, and they've ran with it. He got some booster money in there. I went up and saw him play. I think it was South Dakota State, but they're very athletic. Their bigs get up and down the floor real good. Their bigs, and they're, like you said, nobody's 7-footer, but they got a couple of monsters in there with a lot of reach. They got a lot of movement on offense. They've got all 5 starters can score. They're well coached. Defense is secondary with them. That's the caveat with them. That's the one thing. They just want to run and gun, and they can get up and down the floor. And the game I watched them, they won by about 15. They were laying like 7 or 8 that night. I bet them because I was going, but nonetheless, they just their second chance points in the paint, and their rebounds is, they're better than anybody at it in that league, in that conference. They really are. So that they're a team that if you overlook them in the first round, I don't know what kind of seed they're going to end up with. 14 maybe. I don't know. Something like that. You don't bring your A game. Give you an example. Kansas is going to make the tournament. They shouldn't. They're terrible this year. But if Kansas was to draw UNO and lay 12 or 14, I would pound UNO in that game.
Well, I mean, I think you better get in line, buddy, because when Kansas's lines come out, they're going to get faded so fucking
you put them up against a big name Power 5 team that was middle of the pack, and everybody thinks, oh, UNO, Summit League, they played the Jackrabbits, they played the Bison. Well, who have they played? Are they any good? They're not any good. Some team like Kansas, some also ran in the ACC, an SEC team, a team out of the SEC, say like Missouri, they get so 4 or 5 seed might draw them. Someone like that. But so you get a scenario, a hypothetical like that, and start giving them a bunch of points. Or I don't know if Bradley gets in, but if Bradley gets in out of the Missouri Valley, but Drake took care of business and tied for second best record in college basketball. But Bradley's a team that is like, for instance, they're the only team in college basketball that's ranked in the top 5 top three. They're the number one 3-point shooting team in college basketball, and they didn't have the secret sauce yesterday. And they're also in the top 25 in overall field goal percentage. So you put a team
They didn't
up
have any sauce. They didn't have any
they
sauce yesterday
they
because I
had
lost
none.
I lost my freaking bet on them, man.
Yeah, I stayed away from that game. I had taken them the day before, kind of heavy, but I didn't have a feel for that game. But because if they hit shots, they can play with anybody.
Well, they'll be
If
in
they're
the
not
NIT.
hitting shots, they sucked, and they couldn't hit a bull in the ass, a handful of rocks yesterday, and handed to Drake too. They came out and challenged them, out on past the arc. Drake did a great job of playing defense on them and matched up on them. They let him shoot wild on them once during the regular season. Didn't work out well for him. So, tight ball game and all. But, a team like UNO is one of those teams. I think another team, if they get in, San Diego's another one out west and give a lot of people a lot of problems. I heard, I can't think of his name right now. He was on VEASAN the other day with Mitch and Paulie, the guy that helps Benson run the book there, the old school guy.
Mike
got
Palm?
on, huh? No.
No. Okay.
His name
Metcalf used to be there. I forgot.
No. But not Vaccaro. Anyway, he used to run William Hill there in Vegas. His name escapes me. I'm brain farting, but he talked about San Diego. He was real high on them to advance in the tournament and give people problems. And so, there's another one. I won some money on him this year. So I don't think there's enough parity in there. There's going to be a Cinda Frickinrella. I just don't know who it is. And you're probably going to see some of them in these conference tournaments.
Absolutely.
I guess the best advice I can give you is a team that's a 3 or 4 or maybe even a 5 seed in some of these tournaments that caught a lot of heat at the end of the season and are rolling in here, could be on the bubble or maybe trying to advance out of a 10 or an 8 seed, up to an 8 or whatever. But, there's a few of them that come to mind, and I don't know how surprising it would be, but I put a $500 wager on Maryland plus 450 to win the Big Ten tournament.
All right, hey, we'll get to the Big Ten tournament. As a matter of fact, we're already 17 minutes in and we haven't talked about them, so we better get into these tournaments.
Yeah, let's just rush through these Power Fives and get out of here.
Well, you can pass on the small ones. I got a few things to say. Like, for instance, the Southland tournament. I want to start out with that. McNeese minus 450, Lamar plus 700. That's all you need to say. All I have to say is about this is not only does McNeese get to play this tournament at home, which I think is pretty cool how they do that.
Yeah.
They only have 2 games to win it. I'm not touching this one, man. I'm not laying 450, but I'm okay. If you agree with that, let's move on.
I agree. I mean, the only one that's going to get close to him is either Nichols or Lamar, and they're both, 12. They're both 12-loss teams. I mean, that's one of those top-heavy conferences where it's them and everybody else.
100%. Let's move to the Big Sky, and this thing already started. Plays in Boise, Idaho. I love how they call this tournament Starch Madness. With the potatoes out there. Starch Madness, baby. I got to play in this one, and it's cool how they give the 1 and 2 seeds a day off, and then the 3, 4 play their game the next day, and then the very next day they got to play. So I find that interesting. There's a few tournaments that are doing that now, but I got Portland State. They're the only team that plays any freaking level of defense in the Big Sky. Right. They haven't lost at home. Now this is neutral, so it's not exactly away, but I'm just taking the fact that they're 6-1 and they have the best D, and they've been a little bit hot lately. I took them at 6-1.
Except getting beat by frickin' Pepperdine the other night, and I had them. They were sitting there at 1.5 of Pepperdine. Can't get laid in a monkey whorehouse, fistful of bananas on offense half the time, and they're playing that defense. And they let Pepperdine light them the frick up. I'm still pissed about that play.
Pepperdine just beat Santa Clara.
which is a good win.
Yeah, it is a very good win. But no, I mean, like, I just think that this is the only team that has a shot
Yeah.
via defense. Otherwise, it's completely random. But the fact that it's 6-1, I think, was a little bit long. They're the third favorite or so in this tournament, and that's what I'm thinking. We already played a few of these others. Obviously, we just hit
Right.
Omaha yesterday, and we got a few more.
You
But
know,
the Big Sky.
Hey, I was going to interrupt you in that Big Sky. I will tell you this: Montana is no joke. They could, and I was looking. They're tied 15-3 in conference record with Northern Colorado. They're
the 2 seed. Don't get me wrong. Montana would have been my second pick at plus 215. I just didn't like the plus 215, and you know what? Maybe I just get out of it. I don't know. I'm going to stick with Portland State and see if I can hedge it in the final game. If not, it's not a big deal. It's like a quarter unit beer money type play. I give people that option: throw a quarter unit or just throw $20 on it. Mountain West, the Thomas Mack Center, baby. I'll let you start on this one. I have something small for you.
Well,
and I can go over the favorites.
I put a little bit on Utah State. I like Utah. I put a little bit on Utah State. I think they're going to come around a little bit now. They the odds went up on them, but they lost to Boise State and Colorado State before they pounded Air Force by 40 in their last game. What?
Well, the loss helps your number. The loss helped the number, basically.
Yeah, it helped the number. They had they had New Mexico on the ropes there. Should have beat them twice. They lost to them, but the big win over Colorado State, big win over San Diego State. I mean, I've watched them play a bunch this year. And I think they might be a sleeper in that tournament. Now they're, like a 3 seed. So it's not like it's we're betting UNLV here plus a huge number. But, at the end of the day, it's New Mexico or Colorado State's to lose, but I do think Utah State could make some noise.
Yep. That's very true. Utah State is a consideration. I took something a little bit longer. I was on Boise State in a parlay on Friday, and they got the picks. Yeah, but it's not the reason I'm beating Colorado State. I've been Colorado State at plus 440. Well, the third longest odds. San Diego State is just not a good team this year. I got to throw them out. I just think that Colorado State down the stretch, winning 7 in a row, really says a lot. And 3 of those games were the fact that 3 of those games were away was impressive to me. I feel like they just kind of took the next step here. And this game's in the Thomas Mack Center. Like I said, New Mexico is already in the tournament, Tony. So it makes me want to take a Utah State or a Colorado State.
You wonder, but unlike an Auburn or a Duke or even a Florida, maybe even a Michigan State to a certain degree, they're already in tournament shape, and they might let off on the gas. I think a team like New Mexico or one of these others in this tournament aren't going to let off the gas. They're going to want to win it. They're going to want to go in on a roll. They're not going to worry about saving fuel in the tank.
That's true, but I'd rather bet on a dog fighting for his life than his next meal.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just,
Yeah, no, and that was my point about Omaha. They didn't have to win like yesterday either, but I just know they wanted that trophy because you get a trophy for winning your conference. That's kind of, for these smaller teams, that should be their number 1 priority, is winning it regular season or tournament time. And then your number 2 priority, you want to get to the dance, but getting to the dance, you're not winning it most likely. I don't know when the last time a small team has won this tournament, to be honest with you, but even Gonzaga, that was considered a small team for years, it's been great for 30 years now in basketball. They haven't won it, so there you have it. Colorado State plus 440 for some more beer money, quarter unit, whatever. Big 12, T-Mobile Center in Kansas City. Maybe Tony should be visiting this place.
I will be going down starting Thursday.
Nice. BYU is the hottest team, Tony. but they have the most brutal draw as they have to play Iowa State
Yeah,
and then Houston. I mean, that draw, well, absolutely, that is just punishing, man. I feel like because Iowa State was injured for a while, they kind of took a step back to the 5 seed, and now they have to
right,
they're probably really the 2 or 3, and they have to
right.
play BYU that early. First, Iowa State's going to win, but it's Cincinnati, Oklahoma State. I'm not worried about that. Then they're going to play BYU. It's a revenge spot for them too because they just got clowned at home by BYU. I mean, the truth is that I like Texas Tech the most, but the number is not good enough for me. It's like plus 425. And when I think about what the numbers are going to be when Texas Tech plays Arizona, I think about what the numbers are going to be before that game when they play Baylor. A money line rollover should definitely. I mean, they'll be plus 200 against Houston or plus 180 or something.
Yeah.
So a money line rollover for Texas Tech, but I actually think Baylor at 50-1. I did some shopping. I throw a little bit of quarter unit on that as well. Baylor at 50-1. They played Houston really tough, and Baylor's actually got the type of offense that just is so good in tournaments. You know, they're just, their problem is that they're so hot and cold and inconsistent. But if they just pull it together, like I just saw them play Houston, they almost beat Houston at home. That was so close. I think I think Baylor at 50-1 is worth a sprinkle, but I still like Texas Tech. I'm just not playing the Texas Tech number 20.
Yeah, I have Texas Tech plus 425 to win this tournament. I have Iowa State. You know, the one thing about Iowa State is, you know, when you think about the Big 12, you think about Kansas, Fog Allen, you know, being one of the toughest places to play in the country, like Cameron Indoor. I will tell you that Hilton Coliseum is top 5 in college basketball in Ames, Iowa to go play. And one thing about Iowa State, and I'll tell you what, in football, Jack Trice Stadium is a freaking snake pit as well. It's very difficult to go in and beat either their football program right now or their basketball program when they're at home. And what they did to Arizona here recently was ugly. I mean, they just destroyed a good Arizona team. I'm not saying they're great, but that's a good team. But at days in here, Iowa State travels better than anybody but Kansas in this tournament. The whole town's full of Iowa State people. The whole stadium, it's like a home game to them. When they play, they sell out the arena. They're going to be a tough out in this tournament. And like you said, heads up, they haven't been healthy. Hey, they went down -2 starters and could have beaten Houston. They had Houston on the ropes in that game about 2 weeks ago at Houston. This team's no joke.
No, they're not. I will probably play them against Houston. We'll see what the BYU number is because the whole revenge might be factored in. I might just sit that one out and just wait to let Iowa State against Houston. Even BYU is interesting against Houston too, but they have to hit the 3. If BYU can't hit the 3, they're done. But you know that I'm going to be looking try to fade Houston. Let's move on to the next one.
Well, wait a second. I was going to ask you something about BYU. BYU reminds me a lot of Alabama. Alabama's got to hit threes in order to win games. I mean, not maybe as much as BYU, but when they're not hitting threes, it disrupts their chemistry, so to speak, for lack of a better term.
Well, minus Saunders over there. I mean, Alabama's got way more talent.
Right, I get it. I'm just saying from the makeup perspective.
They both play fast. They both try to play good defense when they get to the other side. You know, it's just never going to be in the top 20 on defense on either of these teams. BYU's kind of like a poor man's Alabama, I would even say. You know, BYU went through. They faced teams in good situations. I think they were overlooked by like Arizona. They were overlooked by Iowa State for sure. Iowa State just got their
Kansas.
Win. If Kansas was beatable anyway, it's
like
Kansas
came off a Utah loss on Saturday, stayed out there. Everybody was pounding Kansas. Self isn't going to lose back-to-back, and BYU's a pretender. Well, I don't know if BYU's a contender or a pretender, but I'll tell you one thing: Kansas has just been a pretender all year, especially down the stretch.
Well, let's look at can Iowa State get off that ball screen and defend the damn three, because they only rank 105th in defending threes, and that's how they lost. And then, of course, they crushed my plus 7.5 against Kansas State somehow. And Kansas State went 2 for 25 on 3-pointers on Saturday. Dude,
I saw that.
Morgan State will beat you if you play.
Yeah.
If you go 2 for freaking 25.
There's a game UNO could win by 10.
I mean, and that's why I don't like the matchup so much for Iowa State versus BYU, but I would like them more against Houston. But yeah, it's a good comparison just because both of them do rely on the three and try to get the offensive rebound. It's just that Alabama's a much better offensive rebounding team, in my opinion, than BYU. Once BYU gets, BYU's a little like Wisconsin in a way. Once they start playing the SEC guys, those 7 foot 6'10" dudes, big beastly men, they're gonna smash them, dude. And that's just what I'm noticing in these tournaments. The teams with the kind of the big boys down low that decide to say, okay, it's time to, get off the pot and start playing basketball. Then then you see what's going on. Let's move to the ACC now. I mean, the ACC, it's in Charlotte, North Carolina. These prices suck. I mean, the truth is, I would say laying 330 on Duke might be a good play. You want to mess with Louisville at plus 550 when they are going to be that against Duke anyway? It's like they're going to be probably plus 300, plus 400 against Duke. Why the hell would you take plus 550 on Louisville without doing a money line rollover on that one? That one just angers me to see how bad these odds are. And it should be Duke and minimum 10-1 on the other ones, right? That's the way I feel. Minimum 10-1.
By the way, we're live, so that's my dog barking.
That's okay. Maybe he likes my play. Dogs are barking.
Dogs are barking in the ACC. Well, I was gonna bring this up. If I was gonna bet one here, I tell you what, I haven't seen the number on Clemson, but Clemson can beat Duke. They're the one team
they're plus 700, and they beat them once. I just don't think, but it almost makes me feel Duke's going to want to smash them even more than Louisville. It's just
you got that kind of angle, but I'm telling you, I'm impressed with Clemson, man. I mean, I'm impressed with them. They just, and they're, they play good away from home. They're, what are they, 9-2 or 9-3? I don't have the number in front of me. They only have like 2 or 3 road losses this year, so neutral floor is not going to bother them. They played. I mean, if we're not talking laying 330 with Duke, the only underdog, put it to you this way, the only plus team I would take from the outset would be Clemson.
Well, Clemson did go to Louisville and lose by 10.
But
they've had a cake schedule too. Their only other non-con loss on the road was South Carolina and Boise State.
Yeah.
I'm not taking anything, but I don't know. Like I said, I need 10-1 or money line rollovers. I would say I'm going to bet this tournament. I'm just not going to do a future. We can find our spots when it comes to that fun stuff. Let's move on to the WAC. Now, the Western Athletic Conference is played at the the Orleans Arena in Vegas.
I went to every game in this tournament last year. I lived out there. I'm back in Kansas City now, helping my my daughter had an accident late last year, and she's back here in Kansas City in recovery. All about that, but so I've been
okay, by the way, by now. I was hoping.
Yeah, well, she's walking, something
Perfect.
that's we didn't think was going to happen, but nonetheless, I went to a lot of the Mountain West games last year and all the WAC games at the Orleans. Great arena to go watch hoops, and of course, Zaga is there in full force. That's going to be an interesting tournament. There's 2 words. I'm interested to hear who your long shot is here.
I don't. So WAC, this is like a Utah Valley it's them or nothing, but the prices kind of look right to me. When we get to the West Coast Conference, I did take St. Mary's in that one. I think they also play in Vegas this week.
Yeah, they do. Same place.
So, same place. So it's kind of like these are busy places, my man. The Orleans are in. There is
I miss it.
There's 3 or 4 tournaments out here actually, which is cool. But the Pac-12 when there was a Pac-12 was out there too, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
they played at T-Mobile.
And rest in peace, Pac-12. Yeah, I mean, I don't have nothing in the whack, so let's pass on this one.
Yeah.
Unless you have something, I don't. Let's go to conference.
No, I'd bet Grand Canyon.
But they're plus 130, man. I love Grand Canyon because they're going to a home game here in Phoenix. Watching Grand Canyon, it's absolutely electric. It's amazing. And that's why the students and the fans are part of the reason why they have such a home court advantage. But dude, this conference absolutely sucks away from home. All of them do. All of them. Grand Canyon loses to Cal Baptist away, Utah Valley away, Louisiana Tech. Their only losses are away, and they just lost to Abilene Christian in overtime on their last game. Oh
yeah, I saw. Yeah,
I mean maybe Seattle or something, but Utah Valley. But dude, if I had to play, it'd probably be Utah Valley. But I don't like anybody. It's just one of those teams that are so bad away that it's hard for me to predict what's going to happen. I think the price ain't good enough. I think that Grand Canyon should be at least 2-1. That's
the thing I like about they play better defense than Utah Valley or even Cal Baptist. I mean, but your conference is in trouble when Seattle leads the conference in defense.
Let's go to the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. I said that wrong. Sorry. The MAAC, the MAAC. We have a location of the Jim Whelan Boardwalk Hall in New Jersey. So this is played pretty close to home for all these teams. The funny thing about this conference, it was Rick Pitino's when he was on Iona. We remember that.
Yeah.
Siena was good for a few years, but they're not. All these teams play on the road. Fantastic. This is the best road conference for covering. And I'm just going to bet the dog. I'm just going to go game by game. And anybody disrespected 4 points, 6 points, 6.5, you're probably just going to want to bet the dog because that's how close these guys are.
Yeah, Mount St. Mary's is a good team there. In that, I've won a bunch of money with them this year. Marist as well. Mount St. Mary's is drawing Marist on Thursday, and they're going to be a dog. And I'll be betting them. They've got some good players there. Adam Clark at Merrimack is a really good player. I watched him play here the other night. Really good. Quinnipiac, obviously, right now is the odds-on favorite, but it's a tight race between them and Merrimack. But I've seen Mount St. Mary's play some really good basketball this year. I don't know what their number is there, but that would be a team that if you don't get ready to play them, you're going to be in trouble. Put it that way.
Yeah. All right. Well, look at Mount St. Mary's. How about the Conference USA? This is going to be in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah.
Anything there?
That conference there.
And I can go over the numbers because Liberty's the favorite, and they're plus 115, and then you got to get down to New Mexico State at plus 500. This feels like the Conference USA championship of 2 years ago, Liberty versus New Mexico State in football, right? Middle Tennessee State plus 600, and Jacksonville State plus 800. Man, look, this one, Liberty is just better than the rest. I don't want to do plus 115. I don't even know if I want to bet it, but anything in this, I haven't bet Conference USA much this year, but I will say that Liberty beat McNeese State this year, and they beat Kansas State this year. So it's like they actually had. I mean, too bad Kansas State's not better. It would have been like a better win for Liberty to possibly make it a big dance, but this is just going to be a one big league, so Liberty's got a lot of pressure and they have to do it. So.
Yeah, this is like this conference is like the ACC. There's just Duke and everybody else. It's Liberty and everybody else in this. Kennesaw State's down this year as well. I don't know, they're fourth or fifth. I haven't looked in that. I have Tim Fines, my small conference guru, my handicapping partner. He does all my small conferences. He runs around in this conference a little bit. He was high on Middle Tennessee early in the year, and they just kind of they did. I mean, they finished second in the league, but they didn't do anything overly impressive, But let's say they're 12-6 in conference, 21-10 overall. They got a tough game against Louisiana Tech. They might not even win that. I think it's Liberty and everybody else like you.
All right, A10. I have a best bet in the A10, Tony.
Go get me.
You want to hear it?
Yeah.
All right, I'll start then. Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. I do not love VCU based on the price. And George Mason has a terrible offense.
Yep.
It's Dayton.
Yep.
Here's why. And of course, I was hoping VCU was going to cover for me, but Dayton was that team that was awesome in the beginning. They did fantastic at that Maui tournament, right? They almost beat like UNC and Iowa State. I mean, they lost by single digits to both, like 2 to UNC, like 3 or 4 to Iowa State. Then they beat UConn, right? And I know UConn's not UConn, but they have the stars that were supposed to be good this year, like Zed Key and Malachi Smith. Then finally they got their head kind of out of their ass and went to VCU with Troutstone. But then I'm getting plus 500 because they're the 3 or 4 seed. It's like they're going to be the 3 seed and they're going to get to face George Mason. When VCU, they're in the dance. Another situation where they're in the dance. Don't get me wrong, just like Tony said before, they still want to win it. But I just think that little extra desperation you're going to have to take with Dayton, who's not in it. So I have Dayton at 5-1, and that's my best bet for one start.
Yeah, I don't agree with you. I circled that when you sent me this list of conferences as sleeper. I don't know how big of a sleeper they are. They beat VCU their last game. They played VCU on the road and lost by 5 in a game they could have won. They had a lead in that game and blew it at VCU, and they finished with 4 straight wins and then winning 6 out of their last 7. And, this is a team. They had a couple of head scratchers. They lost to St. Bonnie's by, 22. I mean, they had a couple of them in there where you kind of scratch your head and go, what the hell? But they went and they played Northwestern on the road early in the year and beat them, beat New Mexico State. They remember they played, here's a couple of teams too. They lost to North Carolina 92-90, and they lost to Iowa State 89-84. So they've been battle tested, and they've hung in there with some good basketball teams. And I definitely have them circled here as a few, as a sleeper in this tournament.
All right, Tony and I agree. Perfect. Yeah, why not?
That's rare. That's rare, by the way.
It's not that rare. Well, when we're talking,
anytime we talk about that, it's not rare.
How dare you wear that hat after that performance yesterday to Iowa, by the way. He's wearing a Nebraska hat, and then Nebraska was at home.
Unreal.
Do or die to make the – don't get me wrong, my Badgers had to do or die to make the double bye, and they blew it to freaking Penn State, a team that's not in it. But Nebraska had to get in, man, and they just scored 66 points against the worst offense. And I lost the over because of that. I lost the over because of Nebraska's freaking
the night they played Michigan, I took Michigan. It was about 2 weeks ago on a Monday. They played Michigan at home, and Nebraska had 21 points at halftime, and Williams had 18 of them. That's how freaking bad their offense is. Hoiberg, I wish everybody quit giving him BJs there in Lincoln and tell him to recruit some freaking shooters. I'm getting sick of this crap.
Connor Sejan had like one of the worst years. He had a good freshman year for us, then just a terrible. He couldn't even start his sophomore year, and then he leaves to Nebraska. I was like, Jesus, feel free to have him.
Yeah.
SEC, baby. Finally, the big, deepest, best conference in the nation.
Oh.
At the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. What a gauntlet. Like I said, man, and Matt Human said the same thing a few weeks ago on this show. he doesn't like the winner of this because they're just going to go through a gauntlet. You hope it's a team that plays only 3 games, though.
And again, we to open
still
up
hard.
the show. To open up the show, how motivated is Auburn or even Florida to walk away with a conference trophy? Their eyes, even Tennessee, their eyes are on a national title. I don't think they give a shit less, honestly.
I think Florida will be motivated. I don't think Tennessee will. I don't think Auburn will. Florida will because they haven't won in a while, and they need something to feel good about because their football team's been bad. Now, finally, their fans are just kind of finally getting together, you know, and they're a top team. They're probably a 1 seed. Florida still thinks they might not be a 1 seed, you know, and I think they need to fight for that. And I think Florida's better than.
You can't read that, but there's my note. Florida, that's my bet. Plus it was a 425. I already bet them.
Where'd you get that? I got +3.
Way early.
Okay, I got it when it opened yesterday at DK. Maybe you got it before that. I got +340, but great number, Tony. But we're on the same side here. Florida to win the SEC at +340 is a good play in my opinion. I think that you know Auburn's a team that needs to not be as critical about winning this, and same with Tennessee, Alabama too. Alabama was a Final Four team last year. That's what they got to focus on. Florida's going to run through this, and it's my only play. I'm not hedging it. That's what we're rolling with.
Yeah, I think that's going to. I think it's probably the deepest, strongest conference I've seen in the last 5 or 6 years. The ACC's had some years, the Big Ten's had some years, but you can go up. And by the way, I know they played like shit down the stretch, but Missouri's no joke. Missouri can give any. Missouri has got 10 guys they rotate in. They don't have a superstar. They can play with anybody. They're always fresh. Burrell is one of the better shooters in college basketball. He's going to be an NBA player. They got a lot of pieces to the puzzle. They sputtered down the stretch. They looked like crap. Who was it? Arkansas,
Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, and Kentucky. I bet the Kentucky game and lost because they just couldn't defend.
They beat Florida earlier this year at Florida.
Yeah, they surprised Florida, you know, and here's the thing. Florida, what I love about them, top 10 in offense, number 3 in offense, number 10 in defense. They can do it all. They rebound their misses. They play great defense. Florida is just above and beyond everybody, minus Auburn. And when I say above and beyond, I don't mean they're way ahead of Alabama. I mean, they're just above them. I like Florida, and they proved it when they
Florida's so good at hit. Everybody talks about, you know, for all you guys watching this, saying, how am I going to win at March Madness? What do I look for? You know, well, everybody, the old saying has always been guard play, guard play, guard play. It's not. You know what wins these big games? Rebounding. And Florida is one of the best in the country at it on both ends, especially on the defense. And when I'm talking rebounding, not only do they not give you second chance points, when they get that ball, they are looking to get down the floor. Like they push it. And they're hard to hang with when you're letting them own the boards.
That's a great point. And spoken from a true professional. And Tony, listen, this is neutral courts situations here on out.
Yeah.
Neither team is used to it. Whoever's getting the boards and passing it back out to the guards. Yep. You know, the guards look great because they get 2 or 3 attempts at a 3 after their big game. You know, so they call it a guards game. But the truth is, man, you want to win these tournaments on neutral courts. You want to rebound that basketball. So I 100% agree with you on that one, Tony. Let's move on to the next one, which is the AAC, the American Athletic Conference in Dickens Arena, Fort Worth, Texas. Memphis is in the NCAA tournament, but I think they're going to win this too. I just don't want to lay the juice here. I don't want to lay minus 105, minus 115. I'll do a money line rollover. I'll just bet Memphis games. You know, it's like, ooh, I'm gonna take a future on Memphis at minus 1. That doesn't get me excited, and especially when Memphis and a guy like Penny Hardaway could blow a game or two, and he's done it in his life, and they're not desperate. So I'm just passing and saying it's probably Memphis.
I do. I I'd liked UAB earlier in the year, but they had a crappy loss against Tulane out of nowhere. Was Sunday yesterday. I didn't see that coming. 85-68, but they took Memphis, they had them at home and they had a lead and they blew it, but they lost by 7 to Memphis in that game. But they're capable here. And if they're catching big points, I'd take a look at them.
Yeah. And that's a good point on that one. Keep our eyes open for prices, my friends, because it's all coming. It's all starting tomorrow for the big tournaments. And then when I say tomorrow, this is coming on Tuesday, so it actually starts today in these tournaments. How about the Big Ten, my friend? Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. That's where it's always at.
Yeah.
And I just find that this tournament is kind of up in the air. And when I say it's always that, I think they played at the football stadium before too. So maybe I shouldn't say it's always there, but it's always in Indianapolis is what I'm trying to say. Why don't you go first? I have a few things to say myself.
Well, if I'm not sold on Michigan State because I know they do a lot of Michigan State this time of year, every year under Tom Izzo. Is in the top 5 in fundamentally sound teams that play fundamentally sound basketball. That's Tom Izzo. That being said, the guard play there scares the piss out of me. But 2 teams here, I think, that can contend for this title. And I don't know what Izzo wants to do with Sparty. They won the regular season. Maryland, we've mentioned, but also I tell you what, I got a sneaking feeling that Purdue's going to be making some noise in this tournament. They need to. I think he's going to bring him in there and want to win it. And I think you're going to see a good effort out of Purdue.
See, here's the thing. I agree with you. I just think Michigan State isn't a strong number 1 seed. I think that the league really wanted them to finish strong and win. Maryland's a solid 2 seed. Yeah. And I like Maryland more than anybody. Here's the problem. I wish Maryland was on the Michigan State side because I would have loved to fade Michigan State with Maryland. But now I'm like looking at Wisconsin, who had a shit-eating finish to their season.
Man, losing to Penn State, that shocked me.
I'm still pissed about that.
You lost.
They're up by 13.
Oregon in overtime. That's not bad.
They're coach. In both.
You lost to Michigan State by 9 and
double-digit leads. Double-digit leads they blew.
Yeah, I don't know why they can't. It scares me this time of year with a team that's not a closer. Like that's one thing. St. John's probably overrated, but I'll tell you one thing they do when they get in tight ball games, they close, they win them. You got to be a closer, man. I don't know how else to put it. It's like the Kansas City Chiefs this year weren't the best team in football. Somehow they made it to a Super Bowl, but how have they done it the past 3 years? When they're not playing well, they close games. They find ways to win. In Wisconsin, it's finding ways to lose them at the wrong time.
UCLA is the 4 seed, and Wisconsin will play UCLA before they get to Michigan State. If Wisconsin doesn't blow it against Northwestern or somebody, that could happen. Right. Here's what I'm going to say. UCLA absolutely sucks on the road themselves. They're a pretty fundamentally sound team too, but they're just not. They're not it. They're not going to beat Michigan State. I think Wisconsin can beat Michigan State because of that offense. Yeah. So I think, but I'm not taking 6.5 to 1 on Wisconsin because that's a bad number because that Wisconsin has 4 games. They have 4. So not 3. You can do a money line rollover with Wisconsin. They'll be a dog to Michigan State. They're only going to be a small favorite against UCLA. And then, by the time you get to a Maryland or a Michigan, it's going to be pretty close to even money. So that's 4 rollovers you have there. And you can even get out by the final game if you don't want it. But I think that, I'll do this. I'll take Maryland at plus 450, and I'll take Wisconsin on a money line rollover for the same bet and just hope that they both meet each other because I'm down on Michigan. Illinois could sneak in too, but their number sucks too at 7-1. Purdue needs it the most, but they're
Yeah.
inconsistent.
To
I would take Purdue if I wasn't taking Maryland, but they got the leadership with Lawyer there and Smith, and they obviously a great coach in Matt Painter, right? And
I mean, this is a out of all the Power 5 conferences, this matches the SEC in the fact that there's 4 or 5 teams that could actually win it.
Yeah, it does.
I mean,
but I think it's way more. At least in the SEC, you got like really top end teams. I don't think Michigan State's that top end. And
no,
I think they don't shoot threes. They don't hit threes, and they're just getting by because they had to just. They don't get me wrong. They defend the three well, but nobody's making threes in East Lansing. And when they go to like USC and lose by 6 points, go to Indiana, a bad Indiana, they lost that one at home. I mean, they're just. I think teams just didn't have their A game in a lot of cases in this, so I'm just faded. I think if you just kind of try to come up with a strategy to fade Michigan State and maybe get one on each side and one of them makes it, you can make a little money, or you can lose them both. That's gambling, right? That's how it is.
I'll tell you what right now, just to give you an idea. Michigan State, if they'd have played in the SEC this year, they'd be at least a 12-loss team.
Oh, for sure. At least I would say at least a 10-loss team. Big East. Let's go move to the Big East. We're running low on time. This is played at Madison Square Garden, home for St. John's. St. John's is the best team, but I think UConn still has upside. Now, I took UConn at plus 650 at BetMGM. It's down to 350. So I have some hell of a line value here, but I still don't like UConn that much. I'm not betting. I'm not giving out plus 350. I gave out plus 650. Now, here's the problem. St. John's offense is too inconsistent for me to trust them, even though they're playing at home. St. John's probably wins it. But now if I had to make a play, it'd be Marquette at plus 550, just because now the value is a little bit more on Marquette. Moneyline rollover is probably the best. But the problem with that, and I'm sick of the people that say, oh, why don't you moneyline roll? Well, because I have to get up every fucking morning, remember to do it. That's why. It's like I've missed out on them before. Who hasn't, right? Our lives are busy. And so when people like try to preach to you like moneyline roll, I'm like, dude, just settle down. I'm just gonna grab this and just kind of sit down and enjoy it for a while, right? But I mean, of course, if you're a professional that sits in front of a computer that doesn't necessarily sell picks, that just tries to live off your betting, you would do what you can. I don't think that's the audience that cares about listening to this show as much as just people that want to learn in general. But no, I think that there's no more value here, and the Johnny's probably win it.
I tell you what, if I was going to take a flyer in this, I'd take Creighton. I think McDermott's got a good team. They split this year. They played within 4 points of St. John's. They split with Marquette. They split with Connecticut. They're capable. If you have a bad day against them, they're going to beat you. They got some players. They got a very good coach. I mean, plus I saw him at plus
370. I see.
Yeah, plus 370, 400.
It wasn't enough for me though. When I saw UConn at 650, don't get me wrong. I do like Creighton, but one thing I don't like about Creighton though, they rely so much on Kalkbrenner. If he gets in foul trouble or something, this team doesn't shoot threes well. They're the best down low with Kalkbrenner. They're number 1 in 2-point percentage. But they don't get to the free throw line that much. They don't steal the ball. They're hot and cold. Don't get me wrong. If they were plus 650, I'd grab them before UConn, but they're not, So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, they're third in the conference in offense and fourth in defense. They're seated right there where they should be with those numbers. And, like I said, they need something. They need something to go their way if they're playing UConn or St. John's or Marquette. They need somebody to have a bad day, and they need to. It's shocking as good of a 3-point team as they've been over the years that they just don't have pure shooters. They remind me a lot of Kansas this year. How can you be Creighton or how can you be Kansas, and not have 3-point shooters on your team? Or how are you not getting them in the portal? How are you not, how do you not have knockdown shot artists and they don't? And but just as a flyer, I'd lean Creighton there. St. John's can't hit an outside shot either, dude. I mean, they're 29%, one of the worst teams in college basketball.
Yeah. And I don't like those for tournaments necessarily. Two left, the Big West and the MAC, and we're about out of time, so I want to quick just say it. Big West played at Lee's Family Forum in Las Vegas. Anyone beating UC San Diego? I don't think so. UC San Diego is minus 160, but I think there's value there just because they're that much better.
Yep.
Now, UC Irvine, they did lose to them, and ever since the Irvine lost, they went on a tear, and they smoked Irvine at home. And I'm thinking about laying it, man. This is the only one that, is going to be such big favorites in their game that you could do a money line rollover. You might not even get minus 160, So I'm considering it. I didn't do it yet, but I don't think anyone's beating them.
No one's going to beat them, and they're probably going to make some noise. They could be depending on their draw and their bracket, they're a potential Cinderella in the March Madness. They could be that team.
I agree with you. I think we're not the only ones thinking that, but I definitely agree with that. Now, and I got nothing on the MAC. I think Akron's just the better team, but
right. I was going to just mention one thing about the MAC. I will tell you that although they struggled with them this year, Miami of Ohio is playing their best ball of the season, and they're a team that's going to depend on who they play and what the line is. You get them around minus 5, 6, even close to 7 against certain teams there, they can win by double digits. So just look at their line in this tournament, who they're playing. That's all I'm saying, And one other line too, you mentioned if you end up with a Wisconsin UC, do we have a Wisconsin UCLA matchup?
Not yet. Wisconsin's got to beat either Minnesota or Iowa, I believe. Or Minnesota. It's one of them. Let me look at the bracket here.
If you get Wisconsin laying 3 or less against them, UCLA doesn't play well against them. I think Wisconsin put it to them. I hate to say that, too, because you're a big Wisconsin guy, and you shove it up my ass all year, although you were quiet during football this year during that weekend in Lincoln.
I was focused on my betting.
Yeah, you were. But nonetheless, you and the great Kanosh hit me from both sides. But at the end of the day, that's one thing I did have that circled. UCLA, they look kind of pretty on paper till you start looking at how they played on the road and stuff. And I think Wisconsin and Purdue in that tournament are dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin can either crap the bed or destroy you. So I would lay 3 for sure.
If they're hitting threes, they can play with anybody. If they're hitting threes, if they're hitting 38% and from 3-point range and doing the rest of the things well, they can beat anybody in that tournament.
100%.
In that Big Ten tournament. Let's
move on to beer bet banger. So, I mean, we discussed long shots. What's your favorite long shot of the discussion that you want to give out for a beer bet banger? I'll go first. I'm going to say Dayton because it's my best bet. So why not just kind of make that sum it into one? It's more than a beer bet. I'm actually taking 1 unit on Dayton to win it, and I'll maybe hedge that when I get an opportunity, especially if it's not VCU and I get plus money. But that's mine, Tony.
Well, Florida's mine. I think Florida wins that tournament, and they're in the 300s right now. I like Florida. I think I like what I saw from them down the stretch, and I think they're a team that can beat anybody in the country on any given night. Just the way they rebound and get back, they're well coached. They got guys that can knock down freaking shots. They got size, length. They got it all. I think they can win that. And I like I said, I don't know about the motivation of the top tier teams in the SEC. They're a top tier team, but I don't know about the motivation of Auburn and Tennessee. I think they want to stay healthy and get in the dance and go for the big prize. I think, like you said, Florida does need something good to happen. Yeah, they do. They want to make sure they're the 1 seed. I love Florida. That's my second favorite bet of this whole show. So great stuff, Tony. What's going on over at Doc Sports? Well, we've had a couple years. This wasn't our year in college basketball, believe it or not. We had kind of a down year. The last 2 years, maybe 3 years in a row. March Madness, 33 years of experience. I think we were like plus $2,600 last year in Madness for a $100 player, and a year before that was like plus 2,400. So we know how to pick and choose your spots and help you with your volume and manage your bankroll in terms of how we put out the units and the volume. So our stuff will be up over at DocSports.com. Follow me on YouTube. Just go to Doc Sports. I give out 5-6 free plays a week. Doc Sports channel over there. And, of course, on Twitter at TGeorgeSports, I'll be putting out some second half lines during March Madness for free. Tell you what I'm betting. You can follow me there at TGeorgeSports.
All right. Make sure you guys follow Tony. Tony, thanks again for coming on. Enjoy yourself this weekend at the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah. I'll send you a picture, my man.